Hi, everyone. Welcome. See, everyone's coming in. I know we can't see your lovely faces, but I hope you are smiling just like we are. My name is Carolyn, and I work for the Foundation for Intentional Communities, or community, sorry. I'm going to be your background host today, getting us started and making sure if you have any questions or tech issues that I can help you do those things. I'm going to give us about a little minute here just to see everyone coming on in. And before I get started with a little slideshow introduction. So for those of you who are just welcoming yourselves in, again, my name is Carolyn and I work for the Foundation for Intentional Community. And I think I'm going to get us started on this introduction slide. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm seeing. And here we go. So you are in the correct place. We are going to be meeting with communities that have openings. I am so excited. My community, I live at Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage and I'm going through the residency process right now. And I have one of my fellow community mates here. So that's very exciting today. For those of you who don't know, we have a new book that has come out. It's by Jana Ludwig and Karen Gimnig, and it is the Cooperative Culture Handbook. It's a companion book to Jana's earlier book, Together Resilient, Building Community in the Age of Climate Disruption. If you are interested in pre-ordering that book, we have it at ic.org/handbook. It's really great. We're doing some workshops that go along with it, and I've really been enjoying it so far, and it's coming out this month for print. And also, so exciting, our first time to announce, we have some merchandise available that we've been creating, and I really love them. Some of them make me giggle. They're really sweet. We have a mask and a bag also, some sweatshirts, t-shirts, long sleeve shirts. They're very sweet. I think I definitely love the I've Seen It All. I live in a commune one. That one, like, I haven't lived in a commune, but I kind of want that shirt. It's so cute. So if you want to see that, I'll even put the link in the chat in a minute. But it's at our intentional community store for bonfire.com. And I'll put that in, like I said, in the chat in just a second. So we do have some upcoming events. For those of you interested, community starters and community seeker events. One of those is activism in intentional community and community and activism. And that's gonna be with Emma, and that's next Thursday. I am so excited about this. Oh, wait, that's not next Thursday. That's tomorrow. I am so excited about this event. I'm actually really, really looking forward to being with Emma and hearing what she has to say. She's really lovely to speak to. And I think it's a poignant time to be talking about these things. Also, this is a workshop that's going to go with that like a companion piece to that book. This is Learning the Art of Listening, an Undervalued Game Changer. And I'm excited about this workshop as well, because listening has been something I've had to work on quite a bit in my life. And that will be next Wednesday on the 18th. And then finally, we do have a Community Connect coming up, and that's an online event for our FIC members. So if you are an FIC member, you can come to this event for free, or if not, you can sign up for it. Also, I highly recommend becoming an FIC member. You get lots of perks, like getting the backlog of all of the community magazines. You get a little badge on the ic.org site, and you help support our mission, which I think is wonderful, to spread community around the world. We are recording this event, and any of our events that we've done in the past, we have recordings of. So you can go to ic.org/recordings to get those. So you can rent or purchase those, and you'll actually get the recording for this tomorrow in case you missed a piece of it or something. Now, I invite you to remove distractions, get yourself something nice to drink, any note-taking things for questions, and just welcome yourself to the space, center yourself with us. We're going to spend the next 2 lovely hours together, and I'm so looking forward to hearing about all of these communities. I'm going to be passing the baton off to my fellow FIC host, which is Cynthia. Cynthia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. Welcome to everyone who is listening in, and also to our panelists. Feel free, participants, to just write in the chat, where you're calling in from and what brought you to this event. We'd love to get a sense for who you are. And yeah, just to share a little bit about myself, I am a co-director at the Foundation for Intentional Community, calling in from Vermont, where I live at an eco-village called Headwaters. It's a pretty small community in central Vermont, and I just love how all of our panelists and the hosts, Carolyn and myself, are all living in community. And we're glad to share this a little bit about this way of living with all of you, especially those of you who might be new to intentional community as a concept. Maybe you haven't ever visited one before, but for some reason you're here today. So I'd like to think that you're curious, and maybe some of you are even on that journey of really seeking the place that you might want to live. So we put together this event as an opportunity to share with you about some pretty key communities, diverse range of communities. We have communities spanning across the United States here, some large, some small, some with particular missions, co-housing communities, eco-villages. Kind of just want to give you a diverse taste for what's out there in the network of intentional communities. There are over 1,000 communities listed in our directory at ic.org just in the United States. And globally, we estimate that there's around 30,000 communities. So there's a lot. And I know that right now is an interesting time if you are looking to join a community because of the pandemic. Many communities have closed their visitor program or have shifted their membership application process to happen more online. But there are communities that are looking for members, and all of the communities here today are open to new members. So potentially this could be an option for you. And we want to give this as a way to kind of take a virtual tour. So we're going to start with each of the communities sharing a presentation with photos of their community and what it's like to live there, a little bit about the membership process, what you can expect. And then, so that each presenter will present for 5 minutes, and then we'll have 5 minutes for questions. So be thinking about what questions you might have while you listen to each of these presentations. So we'll go 5 minutes presentation, 5 minutes question, 5 minutes presentation, 5 minutes question, and so on. And then after the presentations, we'll have a little bit of a kind of more panel discussion or conversation about some of the benefits of living in community and the challenges, especially right now, and about the any advice that these panelists have for you as community seekers. And then hopefully we'll have lots of time at the end for more Q&A. So if you don't get your questions answered in the first round of questions, you'll have an opportunity again at the end. So please stay till the end. Okay, so I think that's everything I have. I just want to share briefly about the communities that we have here today. And this is also the order that we'll be presenting them. So first we have up is Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage in Missouri. And that's Daniela who's going to be presenting about this community. Adawehi Wellness Village in North Carolina. And Terry will be presenting about this community. Alpenglow Cohousing in Colorado. And we have Pam with us to present about Alpenglow. And then Innisfree Village, and Rory is going to present about Innisfree. And unfortunately, our Heart to Heart Farms, we also had invited and had them all queued up to present today, but we just got word that the presenter had an injury. So will not be joining us, but we'll see if we can maybe get the presentation they were going to share. And so we can include that in the follow-up email, because all of you will receive as part of this event a email that has the recording. So you'll be able to watch again these presentations afterwards. And I think that's all I have. So I want to kick this off, starting with Danielle, who's going to share about Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage. Take it away, Danielle.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and we will launch in once the host enables me to do so. Okay, there we go. So Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage. This is a place where folks can come to experience living lightly on planet Earth. We were formed in 1997 and Dancing Rabbit has just celebrated its 23rd anniversary this year. Where are we? This is a picture of the land. This is an aerial view of the village of Dancing Rabbit. And an important thing to note is that only 2 of these buildings existed when Dancing Rabbit was, the land was purchased for Dancing Rabbit. And so all of the buildings, all of the roads, this pond out here, all of this has been part of the Ecovillage architecture and creation process in the last 23 years. The pre-existing buildings were an old pig barn and a machine shed that have now been repurposed into a bike shed and a location for a cooperative cars and biodiesel system. So the people of Dancing Rabbit, this is a picture of our community at one of the last village gatherings. We are currently a community of 60 with 37 members, 12 residents, and 11 youth. And the difference between membership and residency is just a matter of depth of time and experience and commitment to the land. The place, the location of Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage. We are in the context of the US, we are in the Midwest. You can see right there, we are not far from Chicago, St. Louis, and Kansas City, kind of in the middle of all 3 of those if you were to draw a triangle. And in Missouri itself, we are near a little town called Memphis. So here's another aerial view, and you can see here that we are 40 acres is set aside for the village, 60 acres is set aside for prairie restoration, 60 for woodland, and 120 acres could be potential agricultural or food production land. Only about 20 of that is currently in use. We have a total of 280 acres at Dancing Rabbit. And the land is all paid off, and we have no joining fees or membership fees, but we do have, if you become a member, you agree to contribute 2% of your annual income to the nonprofit that does our world-changing education, research, and inspiration work on behalf of the community. This is a little image of the buildings here at Dancing Rabbit, the village portion of the village. You can see all of these handmade houses and kitchen cooperatives. One unique thing about Dancing Rabbit is that many folks eat in an eating cooperative instead of in their own personal house. And so you'll see on here, here's Ironweed Kitchen Co-op, that's where I eat. This is Sky House Kitchen Co-op, that's where Carolyn eats. And there's a number of other kitchen cooperatives. And the best part about that is that I only have to cook once a week for myself. I cook dinner and lunch for my kitchen cooperative mates. And then the rest of the week I show up and there's a beautiful, delicious, nutritious hot meal already made for me at 6:30 when I get there. Big win for community with cooperative eating. The purpose of Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage, essentially in a nutshell, Dancing Rabbit was founded to find out how people can live rich, vibrant lives while leaving a footprint that the planet can sustain. The values, Dancing Rabbit holds sustainability at its highest value, and we hold that there are different types of sustainability. So there's physical, social, and inner sustainability. I don't want to get into these too much since this is just a 5-minute presentation, but at the very basis, inner sustainability are the things that we do that help take care of us and to learn more deeply about ourselves and each other to grow to become the people we want to be. That people do that in different ways. Quality of life is something that shows up in inner sustainability. Interpersonal sustainability is anything that nurtures or restores a feeling of interconnectedness among individuals and or the group as a whole. It allows us to work together and make decisions from a place of trust with one another. Togetherness, interpersonal sustainability, lots of C words in that one. Examples of interpersonal sustainability: physical sustainability, tending the health of the planet, making choices that do not deplete the Earth's resources faster than they can be replenished. Physical sustainability has a lot of different elements to it, as many of you know. Climate chaos is one of the things that binds us together. And one of the key questions at Dancing Rabbit is, what did you do in the climate war? This is a poster you could find in the Dancing Rabbit Common House. Ecological covenants are the core of Dancing Rabbit's agreement system. So this is what sets us apart from many other communities. We have agreements about not having personal motorized vehicles, not using fossil fuels, making sure that we do all organic agriculture, producing electricity renewably, and any electricity that we import from offsite shall be replenished from our renewable energy. Lumber shall be reused, reclaimed, locally harvested, or sustainably sourced, and our waste disposal systems shall reclaim organic and recyclable materials. So this is just a quick look at the average American's footprint compared to the average rabbit. This is side by side. Quick numbers on electricity consumption, renewable energy, solid waste. One of the most radical things we do at Dancing Rabbit is recycle our poop. So one of the things that we require, there are no flush toilets at Dancing Rabbit. There are all composting toilets. Many of them use the bucket system, which you may be familiar with. You do your deposit, you pull your bucket out, you put it in the local composting bin, and then it helps, you want to put it on non-ground crops, but you can put it in orchards and high yield crops, and it helps make the gardens beautiful. Water consumption is another element of living at Dancing Rabbit. Our pond is a big part of that. And the other piece that I'll just touch on, this is the average representation of the average American car ownership. Roughly it's 0.8 cars per person in the United States. At Dancing Rabbit, we have a car cooperative, and it looks more like this. So it's 1 car for every 0.08 cars per person. Food is another element to it, which I'm sure we can all appreciate the benefits of local organic food. Natural gas is an important piece of our cooking. At Dancing Rabbit, we utilize things like solar cookers and utilize those natural resources. And building materials, we make sure that our houses at Dancing Rabbit are well insulated, made from local materials, use reclaimed materials, and are small in size. This is a picture of a timber frame house. You'll get to see a few pictures of the buildings here. Straw bale building, reclaimed bus turned into a house at Dancing Rabbit, timber frame home in process, reciprocal roof structure. This is an example of the small footprint at Dancing Rabbit. This is a picture of my house, actually, and that's a picture of inside my house. So that earthen plaster with the reciprocal roof and natural plaster floor as well. This is a picture of natural building underway at Dancing Rabbit. And this is Sky House. That's actually the building that Carolyn lives in right now. And that's a cooperative house that has, it's kind of like our mini apartment building at Dancing Rabbit. So, and the nice thing about natural building is that you get to create all your own custom art touches. So if you want to explore whether you are a good fit for Dancing Rabbit, the membership process starts with coming for a visit. We have visitor programs. We ask anybody who wants to consider joining Dancing Rabbit and exploring our community to come to our website, dancingrabbit.org/visit. I'm also going to give Carolyn credit for creating this webpage. She created the landing page. We would love it if you would come visit the page and Dancing Rabbit. Our next visitor programs are in 2021, provided coronavirus is not an issue or less of an issue at that point. If we can manage it, we will have our first visitor program again in April. And as you can see, there are a number of slots already sold. People are already paying for these programs. So anybody who's serious about visiting Dancing Rabbit this year, don't wait to find out whether coronavirus is going to be a thing or not, because we already have those slots disappearing. So that's how you can come visit our 23-year-old community. And we would love to see you here. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Danielle. Wow. I feel like Dancing Rabbit is just such a rich community. We could spend the whole 2 hours just getting into all like the components of what you have going on there. But that was an excellent summary. Good. And we have a little bit of time for questions. If anyone from our audience has a question, you can type it into the chat, or what we would love is if you can actually use the raise your hand button. And then we'll see that you have your hand raised. We'll be able to bring you in here to ask your question. Great. I see we have a few. So if you don't mind joining in, you can actually share your video so that we can see you, Wendy. And I just unmuted you. Hi.
Hi. Thank you, everyone. It's really lovely to be here. I just had a question about Dancing Rabbit. I actually watched the movie this past weekend on Intentional. It was fabulous. I was so excited about it. Just wondering, are there any teenagers in that youth? Because I have a 14-year-old son, and he's not even going to consider anything unless there are built-in buddies.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a teenager right now, our oldest teenager. Well, we've got an 18-year-old living here, a 17-year-old living here. We have a 13-year-old that's currently in boarding school, and we have a contingent population both here and at Red Earth Farms and Sandhill Community, which are right next door. We have a number of youth who are in the range of 10 to 14. And I want to say there's about 5 or 6 of them. And so even though Dancing Rabbit's kid population is 11, if you add the kids from Red Earth Farms and Sandhill, it's, you know, maybe double that. And there is a group of kids in the cohort range of like 10 to 14. So this would be a good time for your kid to come here and have some buddies.
Right, because he's a little bit shy, a little bit introverted, and that's why I thought intentional community would be so good because, you know, you've already got that little insulated group and they would just, you know, welcome him in and then he'd be off and I'd be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Good. Great question, Wendy. Thank you. And I'm going to put you
There's a question in the chat about the composting toilets legal in our state. Yes, Humanure is a legal way to compost human waste in Missouri.
Okay, great. And I'm going to bring in Isodel. Let's see. There you are. Isolde. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so if someone wants to join the community and build a home, what's the process of doing that? And is the home owned by the person who moves in or by the community?
What a great question. So Dancing Rabbit's land is owned by the land trust. However, any improvements, which include buildings, are owned by the builders or the person that they sell those improvements to. So if you move to Dancing Rabbit, the first step would be, of course, to come to our visitor program. Then you can submit an application for residency. And then 6 months down the line, you can become a member of Dancing Rabbit. And at the point of being a member, you can then build or own a house. So that's the process for moving to Dancing Rabbit, becoming a member, and building a house. Was there another part of your question that I'm forgetting?
No, I just thought of one. Who determines the style of the home? And does the community have some say over size and amenities and things like that?
Sure. So we do have, the builder determines the size of the home, and you can contract a builder here to build your home if you're not a builder yourself. We do have a Warren siting committee. Rabbits live in things called warrens, and so our homes are called warrens at Dancing Rabbit. And a Warren siting committee approves, and they look at each build with the lens of like, are things being done in the most ecological way, and how could these buildings relate to the other buildings in that neighborhood in a cooperative fashion? So those are some of the things that we consider when we build at Dancing Rabbit. And there's all styles. There's green building, there's natural building, and people get very creative with their homes here. And one of the handy things about Scotland County, Missouri, is that there are no building codes, which is one of the key reasons that the founders chose this location, because they knew they wanted natural building to be an option. They knew they wanted to have straw bale insulation, and they didn't want to move to a place with highly restrictive codes. So that's one of the reasons for the location for Dancing Rabbit and why we can be so expressive and artistic with our buildings.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good. And Danielle, are there any age restrictions?
I saw that question in the chat. There are no age restrictions. And in fact, Dancing Rabbit is one of the most age diversities that I've personally lived at. I've lived in more than one IC, and I have seen, even over the past 8 years, an increasing number of folks who move here, who are baby boomers who move here, or people who are aging who have been here in the community. So we have folks, like we said, all the way down from the children, all the way up into their 50s, 60s. And our oldest member right now is, I believe, 69. And so if you are a baby boomer, if you are in that stage of life, you would be in good company at Dancing Rabbit.
Nice. Good. Wow, I see we still have a lot of hands raised. I do want to move on to the next presenter just to give everyone time, and we will have more opportunities for Q&A at the end. So next we're going to go to Terry, who is representing Adawehi community. And take it away, Terry.
Hello, everyone. I'm coming to you from the beautiful foothills of Western North Carolina. This is actually a photo of the Adawehi campus, 125 acres, founded similar to Dancing Rabbit 22 years ago. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're just going to look at photos, the photo gallery from our website, and you're going to get a narrative tour as opposed to just pictures. And this is the entrance to Adawehi in spring in full bloom. And you can see very wooded. The area is under an environmental easement and is all natural forest. When you first come in, this is our organic grocery store right on site. And by the way, Adawehi is completely open to the public. We have like I said, the grocery store, a conference building, walking trails. We're founded on the two tenets of health and healing of mind, body, spirit, and emotions. And there are 8 healing practitioners that have their offices here at Adawehi that serve, well, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Folks come from all over to work with our healers. This is our conference building where we have community events, and a few of the healers work out of this building. This is our healing center. This is the first building at Adawehi that was built 22 years ago. And we outgrew it in about 2 years. So we started to develop the rest of the campus. But Adawehi started as just a healing center and then became an intentional community with co-housing. The entrance to the healing center. We have greenhouses and gardens at Adawehi where we grow food for ourselves, and we sell them in town at the weekly farmers market, which is on hold right now, but which will resume, I'm sure, once we get out of this COVID situation. But we certainly don't eat, all of our food is not grown for our consumption. It's grown for use by the local community. And we serve some restaurants in the area, and like I said, at the farmers market. That's another picture. We have 2 greenhouses that are growing year round. And this is Mark, one of our community members, getting ready to go to the farmers market last summer. And we have a lot of social events and gatherings. This happens to be one of our couples looking at fireworks. And I think I mentioned that there are walking trails on the 125 acres that we maintain and are a part of the environmental easement and are enjoyed by folks from all over Western North Carolina. The property is bordered by creek, White Oak Creek, that comes off of the Blue Ridge Mountains. We are right at the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. This is one of our monthly dances. I look at these pictures and I'm like, oh, I remember when we used to all be in a room without masks on. But anyways, the folks that are running the music for the dance. This is a picture from our gardens, kind of looking up at the Blue Ridge Mountains. And that's one of our community homes there. We call that the Blue House. This is in this part of North Carolina, we have 4 seasons, and we are the Adopt a Highway folks that maintain the country road that Adawehi runs along. We maintain 1.5 miles of that road. It's just beautiful. This is right in the middle of the campus. Every house is on a minimum of 10 acres. Those are our covenants that we wrote. So when you are in one of the homes, you don't even need window treatments. You can literally look all the way around and it's all trees. Here's another event. This is Halloween. This is just a picture looking from the grocery store out to the entrance in the summertime. Another view of the community building and the grocery store. Another event, we once a month get together and watch a family movie, and the different houses sometimes put on skits. And this is a particular skit that one of the houses was doing. I don't even remember what it was, but it was hilarious. So I'll look at some of the houses. This is the house I mentioned to you, the blue house. There are 2 apartments in that house, one up and one down. Every home at Adawehi is completely different as to the level of community living versus privacy. So this one is a little bit more private in that it's an apartment up and an apartment down. Here we have a couple of our community members around Valentine's Day and out on the front deck. Our ages right now, we have a lot of baby boomers. We go up to age 89. And our 89-year-olds participate in all the ways that they can. This is our monthly game night where we get together in the community building, where we used to get together in the community building and play games. This is the hidden house. And this is a 3-story home. The 3rd floor is a bed and breakfast where you would come and stay for a visit to see if Adawehi is a fit for you. And then it's a traditional house with bedrooms and kitchen and living. This is our eldest person that lives here, Carol. She's 89. There's Marcus. We have a commercial kitchen in our grocery store, and Marcus bakes bread. Marcus is originally from Switzerland. Here's a birthday celebration in one of the houses. This is some of the grounds around the healing center. Very, very peaceful, very peaceful place. This is another house. This is called the Hill House, and a traditional bedrooms with living and dining shared. That's another view of White Oak Creek and up looking at the Blue Ridge Mountains. This is our founder, Jackie Woods, and she's there in front of the Healing Center. She's been incredibly wonderful guide for us in how we've developed and how we've been successful. And she's still with us. We hope she's with us forever. This is the Discovery House. This is where we have 3 openings right now because a family moved out of state. So we have room for 3. We would like to bring in 3 single folks in this home. This is our New Year's Eve celebration. We do a traditional bowl burning where we set our intention for the next year. This is the renewal house. We have an opening here, a 1-room suite for it could be a couple with a child or a single person that wants to have their office in the house. This is our dome, geodesic dome, another community house. You can see not one house is the same. This is the Valley House, 9 bedrooms, kitchen, living shared, along White Oak Creek. Twice a month, we get together and do community projects. Here's some pictures of those activities going on. One of our parking lots, believe it or not, we even have our parking lots beautifully landscaped. And there we are back at the beginning. I know I went really quick, but that was my intent, so that there would be time for a little bit more time for discussion. So, and I'm going to bring in now Diane Timberlake. She is in charge of visitors and new resident inquiries and all that. So scoot on up, Diane. I'm gonna put my mask on. We wear masks around each other even.
Everyone, thank you for having us on. We are delighted to be here and to share about who we are, although we are at Adawehi Wellness Village. We're ready for questions, right, Terry?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terry, for that presentation. It just looks so beautiful, the community. And I love seeing even photos of like your older residents, and looks like you have a blast together. So let's see. I know we've had a few questions come into the chat. And I encourage folks to raise your hand if you have a question, and we'll bring you in. So 2 simple questions, I think. If the 2 of you want to start answering, how many houses are in the community and how much does it cost to live there? And I'm going to bring in Petra while you're answering.
There are actually 10 homes on the property. And as Terry mentioned, and you saw in the photos, there are different sizes and different different designs. So it depends on the space that a person is looking for. She mentioned that there are some spaces that are suites that may be partial office plus partial personal living space, or it may be a room that shares a bathroom with another. It really depends. And the way that we have it structured is so that your utilities, the water, the internet service, and so on are included in the rent. So it will just depend on the space that a person is drawn to. So when a visit is arranged, the person will come to visit, will tour each of the homes to see what would suit them and then work out what those details are. We've been having questions from families, from singles, and so it will just depend on what the needs are.
Okay, great. Petra, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, I had some internet problems in the beginning, so I apologize if you've already answered these. When you say wellness, what do you mean by wellness? Is that on a spiritual level or what? And also that, and I didn't quite get how often you get together as a community. It seems kind of isolated. It seems to me like a lot of alone time.
So to answer your first question about wellness, our founder and director, Jackie Woods, believes in healing the whole person, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. So everything that we focus on is intended to bring wellness to the whole person, therefore bringing wellness to the whole community, and therefore being able to affect the world and the community around us.
Mm-hmm.
We go about that in different ways. We focus on the physical through the foods that we eat, through the way we work out, through the way we work with the land that we live on, through our homes, mentally through the things that we say, the way that we meditate, the things that we listen to, the kind of music that we allow to come into our spaces. And Jackie has produced a lot of materials that help us to be able to discern between the physical, the emotional, the mental, and so on. So there are lots of different ways in which we're able to support each other and ourselves in becoming whole and becoming well on a spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical level.
And one last question real quick. You answered both there. Thank you. I am going to be certified as a yoga instructor at the end of December. Is there a need for someone like me in there, or is it already in place?
We have a pretty strong yoga practitioner who is doing about 3 classes a week. So at this point, we actually don't have vacancies for any additional healers at this time. And yoga definitely is a form of healing. So thank you for your contribution to that.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Petra. And I think that's about the time that we have for questions. Terry, though, take a look in the chat. There are a bunch of other questions about rent and costs, and I'll let you answer those in the chat. And right now we can go on to our next community presentation, which is Pam presenting about Alpenglow Cohousing.
Yes, hi. Let me just get this
Good.
in a full screen view if I can. Okay. Oops, sorry. So my name is Pam Eddy, and I am with Alpenglow Cohousing, and we're located at Ridgeway, Colorado, which is on the western slope of the Rocky Mountains. And this is a picture of Ridgeway, and those are the San Juan Mountains behind. We're forming a group, so unlike all these other amazing places that have the things built and the activities going on, we are forming, and with the intention of building in spring 2021. So I've always been interested in co-housing, like I think a number of the listeners, a few experiences living communally, but I also lived in Colorado for 10 years. I'm in Bloomington, Indiana now, though. And my husband and I one day just typed in, Googled intentional living Colorado, and up popped in the town of Ridgeway, which we've also been to. So for us, it was pretty easy decision. And a lot of it had to do with, we wanted to live in a small town, and we wanted to kind of come into a community that existed. So for us, Alpenglow is sort of a community within a community. Let's see now. We can go. Just right up front, Ridgeway is historically on Ute territory, and we at Alpenglow are beginning to work on finding ways to acknowledge and address this historic aggression, and so we try to acknowledge that each time. The town itself, or I should say Alpenglow, began in 2016 when a couple of folks in Ridgeway came up with, started talking about it. They started a town meeting and 100 people showed up, and this is in a town of 1,000. So there's been a lot of support for it, and that just kind of continues and helps us on our way. We bought land. It's in town. It's where the old railroad used to be. And it's been inspected environmentally and historically, and all the city approvals are in and it's ready to go. So Alpenglow decided early on to use local architects. These are just some pictures of the town. Local architects and builders and managers in order to ensure the buildings and landscape was integrated with the town and the local environment and the economics, frankly. So our long-term goal is to have multi-generational community where we all can live our lives fully and in community. We have an immediate goal of finding 5 new members who are interested in joining within the next 6 months or so that we can begin the phase 1 construction. And the phase 1 construction is the first 18 of our 26 units. So some of the key features that make us unique is honestly the town of Ridgeway and the outdoor lifestyle that almost everybody in the town enjoys. We love our towns, and we love the town, and I don't even live there yet, but we love the town, and we do actually see ourselves as participating members in it. It's amazingly unique. It's designated as an arts community, and it's also designated as internationally as a dark sky community. So there's a lot of commitment. The town's small but progressive, with a lot of shared. There's even like a shared remote working facility, and lots of people do work remotely. There's some larger towns nearby, the largest being Mount Rose, if you're looking on a map. And we're close to Ouray and Telluride too. So the skiing's sort of nice. So this is just an overlay of where the community will be. That's actually the community plan there. You can see they're by, what do you call them? Houses that share a wall. I'm losing that word. But it's literally in the town. And mountain views are coming out from that south, which is to the bottom of the screen, and to the east, to the left of the screen. The layout of the town, of the co-housing, is pretty consistent with what you'd expect to find in co-housing. We're on 4.1 acres by the way, so we're not the we don't have the things that some of the other groups that have presented so far have, but we've got some pretty nice land around us. So garages on the edge, common house in the middle, homes facing forward. We thought early on that we knew we wanted both that ability to have a privacy, these are private homes, but then communities. So even the details like the back porches face away from the community, and the front porches face into the community. So just a lot of consideration that way. So there's a shot of the land, and you can see other buildings around because we're in town. This is a view from the south looking south, and those are the San Juan Mountains. Just sort of the layout of some of the buildings. And that's a view to the east of the property. And this is why we're called Alpenglow, is we have an incredible views of these spectacular mountains. And that's an evening sun setting, and that's how you get the Alpenglow. So the town itself is very conscious of where it is and its responsibilities in the nature that it inhabits. It's a very walkable city and bikeable, and that's why the land was bought in town. And it was kind of the only piece of available land, frankly, left. And we are literally next to a coffee shop and across the street from the park and the library, and the market is a 5-minute walk away. So we are bikeable and walkable. And we do try to be sustainable in other ways. We do water catchment. Water is always an issue. There's a large reservoir nearby, but Colorado has requirements around catchment, and we'll do that both on the property and then individually for use. We're solar planned for the common house and the garages, and we're solar set up for the rest of the houses, although we're trying to negotiate something that will give us full access for solar on all the houses. Where the building materials we've picked, that part of it is kind of that balance between what we want to do sustainably and what we can afford. Alpenglow is not, and in Western Colorado is not the least expensive place you can find in the country. One of the most beautiful, but certainly not the least expensive. But the SIP panelings here allow for really good heat retention. We'll have heated floors, and we'll have solar, I hope. So that will address some of those issues. I don't think this is unique at all, but I'll mention that we do our major group decisions, we decide using consensus. We use multiple techniques that are used to ensure people are free to talk and that alternate options are considered. We put consensus above quick decision making, and we're working on finding that balance. For example, we've reserved 30 minutes of each of our bi-weekly meetings to practice and learn more about listening, communication, and consensus building skills. So if you're very experienced with that, that's fantastic. We can always use the skills, and we have some very experienced facilitators. But if you're new to it, we sort of are trying to bring everybody along with what it means to listen and work on consensus building. Because we're new, we're as much about becoming as we are about being in a certain way. So new members will continue to craft our future, and our common values are our common values are kindness and what I call neighborliness. It's a little awkward, but it's just an assumption that we care for each other, living simply, private homes, but sharing larger or less frequently used items. Jeeps, we've got someone who says there are RVs available, woodworking tools, and certainly a lot of things that you would commonly find in an American home. We'll try to limit and share. And our other important values are sustainability and joy. So joining is fairly straightforward. It's an Explorer fee of $200, and that's really just a chance to work so we can work closely with you and make sure it's the right fit. If you choose to join, there's a new membership cost of $1,300. That's assuming $1,500 if you're not an Explorer. But those monies all go towards the cost of your home. And then when you become a member, you are, we're getting closer to the build date. So that 25% of your home is going to be needed to help with the build. So in a way, we're being our own developers, which I suspect the more established groups can share what's involved with doing that. And then at the end of the build of our phase 1 build, you would need to purchase the home as you would normally purchase any home. And the home cost includes the home, the commonly owned land and common house, your garage, and any outbuildings. So we are happy to be in Ridgeway, and happy that you might be interested, and here are some ways you can get in touch with us. So that's it. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Pam. Wow, seeing those mountains just looks like such a stunning place. Absolutely beautiful.
It's stunning, yes.
Yeah, good. Okay, any questions for Pam about Alpenglow Co-housing? Please put your questions in the chat, or even better is to raise your hand so we can hear your voice.
And I saw, oh, all are duplexes. Okay, and 3 are triplexes. And what that means is they're all one, half of them are 1-story duplexes, half of them are 2-story duplexes. The larger homes are 2-story. And then we have 6 units that are, the smallest units are above their own individual garages. So that's what was referred to as a 3 triplex. And Arlene is here with me to help answer questions.
Nice.
Lowest building cost is the lowest, which would be the 720, is 330,000, and it goes up from there, with the 1,600 topping out at over 600,000. Like I said, it's not a cheap place.
Yeah.
Heating bills, I mean, there will be very low. We're shooting for 0 eventually as we get everybody, if we can get everybody into solar. So when you're in a cold place like Colorado, that matters.
Danielle, I think you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I heard recently, Pam, that the was it the land or the loan for the land was just paid off. Can you share what happened? That sounds like a big milestone.
Yes, it was. Yeah, we purchased the land, or the initial group of members purchased the land in 2018. Of course, it was a loan and a with some money down. So we've managed to buy that whole piece of land. It's ours, and that feels really, really, really good. So yeah, it's purchased. Woohoo!
Oh, exciting.
Thank you, Danielle, for those
And
fingers.
Maggie, go ahead. Ask your question.
Oh, there I am. Hi, Pam.
Yeah.
I've been dreaming about retiring in Colorado for quite a long time now. And I just came across this classified ad. So I was like, oh my goodness. But I haven't heard anything to discourage me yet. But I was wondering about a visit. Some of the other groups have these like official time periods.
Oh, yes. We absolutely encourage visits. I'm talking and trying to put the contact information back up because someone asked for that. And so if you're within range, we've done all sorts of things. We've done everything from, we've done virtual tours. We'll actually go out with cameras. We've got quite a few slide presentations that we can sit down and go through with you in much more detail. And then the visits, we'll just, it's getting cold now, but we'll still do them. And that's just out in the land itself and getting to meet. About half our members live in the Ridgeway area, and about half live, I'm in Indiana. We've got Florida, Denver, DC, who recently moved, that's Arlene, and somewhere else, California. So absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Where are you?
I'm in northeastern Kansas at the moment.
Okay.
So
okay.
A neighboring state, but it is a long drive.
Yeah. No, we drove out in the midst of all this not too long ago, but yeah, and people can, there would be arrangements, people can help arrange. We had one member who ran a B&B for a long time, and
yeah,
we could put you up then, but she's sold that. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever.
Yeah. I'm trying to, yeah, I need to get that information up again.
Sweet. I'm glad that this connection is happening.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good. Wonderful. Okay. And I think,
And I'll just say, I'll just put that information in the chat too. So I know we need to move on.
yeah, let's go on to the next presenter. And like I said, we'll have more time for Q&A at the end if you have more questions. But I want to hand it over to Rory, who's going to present about Innisfree community. And take it away, Rory, as you're sharing your screen. Can we hear you? You're muted.
I have to unmute myself. There we go. Now we're good. So I'm so happy to be here. It's really educational for me to hear about the different types of communities. I'm going to start my timer so I'm aware of how long I'm talking. So Innisfree, I think each of the communities is very different. I think what makes Innisfree Village a little bit different than the other communities is that we are an intentional community that was set up by a group of families who had children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And so we are a voluntary community with adults with intellectual disabilities. And that was really important to the founding families, that they didn't want to be a traditional service provider to adults with disabilities, but recognizing that their children as adults would need more support, they wanted to sort of marry the idea of an intentional community with providing those services that their children would need. And so I guess we're the old guys in the group. We'll be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year. We were founded by 4 sets of parents who originally were very interested in the Camp Hill model, if you're familiar with that. And there are a lot of things about our communities that they're very, very similar to Camp Hill. But the main differences as far as our founders were concerned is they wanted to be a secular community. And they also wanted to be a little bit less hierarchical as far as the roles within the village than the Camp Hill communities. So I can't exactly speak to whether, how after 50 years those goals have, I mean, I can say we're secular, but I don't know if Camp Hill would agree we're less hierarchical than they are, but we ended up being an independent 501c3 nonprofit. So we are a nonprofit organization, and we are actually licensed in the state of Virginia as a life sharing community. So we're licensed by our Department of Social Services with a very unique licensure that allows us to ensure the welfare of the adults with disabilities who live with us, but also maintain a level of independence that, say, an assisted living facility would not be able to have. We are also the big guys, I guess. We have 550 acres outside of Crozet, Virginia. So we share the Blue Ridge Mountains with the Adawehi community. That's what you see right there. We have 10 homes where our co-workers and volunteers life share, as well as several other smaller homes on our property where some of our longer term volunteers and staff might live. An average house with co-workers, and I'll go into those terms in a minute, would have about 4 co-workers. Those are adults with intellectual disabilities and 2 volunteers. And our property in Crozet does have both farm and forested land. So our co-workers are adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Currently, we have 35 adults who live in our village and 3 who live in the one house we own in Charlottesville. Their age range was 24 to 92 until about 2 a.m. when our 92-year-old passed on today. So now our age range is 24 to 78. But disabilities range, and we have about 10 of our current coworkers who have lived at Innisfree for 40 or more years. So one thing that's unique about our community is that the coworkers come with an expectation that it will be a lifelong placement for them. The volunteers come and they make an initial 1-year commitment. For some of them, that has become a 25 or 30-year commitment to live in community. For others, it remains a 1-year commitment. And so it's a chance to get some experience life sharing. It's a chance to get some experience living and working with individuals with disabilities. And for some people, that becomes a long-term home, and for others it might not be. I've just listed here, I won't read them all out, some of the, so again, another difference with our community, our coworkers pay a tuition to live there, and we have scholarships in place for people who are unable to pay that in the long term. But our volunteers do get all of their living expenses covered, as well as insurance and a small stipend. And then many of our volunteers who stay on long-term end up on our staff, because we do have some paid staff, again, just because we're providing, services on some level to individuals with disabilities. So our workstation heads, our medical coordinator, all of those are staff positions, but the vast majority of them are filled by people who came as volunteers. So it's definitely a great entry point for young people who are looking at either, again, a non-traditional way of living or working with individuals with disabilities. But it's also, we have a lot of volunteers who come, as retirees or career switchers or, all of the above. And you can just see, this is a list. This is actually as of March, I think, was the last time I updated this slide. But at that time, that's where the current volunteers were from. So you can see we have both domestic and international volunteers.
Rory,
Our work during, yes.
your audio just switched now, but it was a little bit funny before. I don't know if maybe it helps if you speak a little closer to your computer.
Yeah, I'll try to talk a little closer. Sorry, I'm hiding in my bedroom because my children are running around. So our schedule for our week, we have workstations that we participate in. This is, again, if you're familiar with Camp Hill, very similar to their model. We have work 4 days a week, 3 periods a day, and each coworker and volunteer has a schedule that's individualized to them based on their interests and their skill sets, where they try all of the workstations during a trial period. And then we work jointly to put together a schedule that meets the needs of the community and the interests of the individual. And our work is definitely focused on process over product. So we do have products that we sell, and I will run through very quickly our workstations here with just pictures. But we are not a self-sustaining community. So the income we get off of our products is really not a huge part of our budget. It's more about the fulfillment of the creative expression, of seeing the productivity of one's work, and engaging the coworkers and the volunteers together in that work. And also letting the wider community know what the skill sets and resources we can bring are. So we have organic vegetable gardens, urban flower gardens where we make herbal teas and sell fresh flowers. We have a farm where we have about 400 chickens, and then sheep and cattle. And until Sunday, we had turkeys, but those will now be Thanksgiving turkeys. So we don't have those right now. But a lot of our coworkers love working with the animals. They find that very therapeutic. We have a wood shop. So we make some beautiful handmade wood products. And again, our coworkers work in the wood shop depending on their skill sets and physical abilities and the safety of that. We have a weavery. Actually, the shirt I'm wearing, it's hard to see, but the shirt I'm wearing was made in our weavery. And this actually, Robert here, who's at the loom, the older gentleman, is the gentleman who passed on this morning. That's quite an old picture of him. But our coworkers really make beautiful things. They basically get an apprenticeship in the weavery with our head weaver and learn to be just very talented weavers. We have an art studio where we do block printing and also independent projects. We do have a bakery where we make bread. And then we have our community kitchen where volunteers and coworkers work together to make the lunch for the community on our workstation days. And then finally, Community House is a new sort of multi-generational, almost like a senior center, activity center for our semi-retired coworkers, so that there are younger folks coming in and doing activities with them during the day. We also have a fitness program, and then a lot of community involvement, so various volunteer and paid work that our coworkers have, as well as lots of community activities we participate in the greater Charlottesville area. So 5 minutes is very quick. I know I went over, but I'm happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you, Rory. I'm so glad that you guys could be here and present. I love the service orientation that you're bringing in with your community. So thanks for that. And we'll open it up to questions. So please feel free to raise your hand if you have a question or type it into the chat and we'll get those answered. I did have a question, Rory, about the size of your community. How many coworkers, how many volunteers? What does that look like?
So we usually have around 40 coworkers. Right now it's at 37. We haven't made admissions during the pandemic, although we are getting ready to in the new year. And then at any given time, we have generally between 15 and 20 volunteers, and then another, say, 15 to 20 staff members or long-term folks who are living on site. So generally the community is about 75 to 80 people living on site.
Okay. And you're still accepting volunteers?
We are. We actually have, we have 3 cycles per year of volunteer applications, and we just extended, usually November 1st would be a deadline for us, but given all that was happening that particular week, we decided to extend that to November 15th. But we also, we will consider applications in between periods depending on the situation. Obviously with the pandemic, international volunteers became much more difficult to get here. And so right now we're hoping to bounce back a little bit with a really great domestic recruitment cycle.
Nice. Danielle?
Sure. I was curious what you're specifically looking for. Like if you could recruit somebody that would be a great asset for Innisfree Village right now, what sort of person would that be?
I think, really it's an open-mindedness and an excitement about working with people. I think it's great if people have an interest in the gardens or the farm, the wood shop, but we find that it's really important that people are coming to live and work with people with disabilities. They don't have to have had experience in that. I think, sometimes our experience as somebody who's been working with people with disabilities for 20 years, sometimes that can actually lock us into a specific way of thinking. And there's a level of independence and sort of empowerment among our coworkers that might not be in a lot of traditional settings. So definitely don't have to have experience in that realm, but I think an openness to working in that realm. And then, an openness to living with other people from different cultures and to taking on the challenges of life sharing and potentially running a household with a complete stranger, maybe from the other side of the world.
Nice. And one last question. I was curious, on a scale of 1 to 10, how high do you think the average sense of meaning and purpose is for those who live there?
I think it's very high. I would say a 10. I think that every coworker and every volunteer finds those areas that are really fulfilling to them. And certainly, to be honest, there are people who come to Innisfree that we have a 1-month trial for volunteers, and sort of we acknowledge that during that month you might find that this isn't right. There are people who come and they say, whoa, this is overwhelming. But I would say people who come and feel a home there tell us across the board that they just get a huge amount out of it. And I think our coworkers are really very proud. I love giving tours because they just want to talk about what they're doing and show off what they're doing, and they really see the purpose in what they're doing.
Sweet. Yeah, I spent a few days at a Camp Hill community in New York some years ago, and just a short visit, but oh my gosh, it totally shifted things for me and was an incredible experience. So that was just a short visit. And yeah, I encourage folks to check it out if they're curious and want to have, I think a life-changing experience. Good. Alrighty. So that was all of the presentations from our communities. And I know we have a bunch of questions lingering in the chat and people who had raised their hands before. We're gonna get to that soon, but I would love to just have maybe 10 to 15 minutes here for us to have some conversation around yeah, what it means to be living in an intentional community, especially right now during COVID. Like, do you all feel like it's a beneficial thing? In what ways, or a not beneficial thing to be living in a community right now? And how has that experience played out in your community in particular? And whoever wants, we can just kind of popcorn. So feel free to unmute and get started. Yeah, Terry.
Yeah, well, I think I mentioned the age range here. Do you hear me okay behind my mask?
Oh, yeah, just try to speak as clearly as you can.
I will. And it's brought home that every action that I take affects people that I love in a bigger way. Because I myself am very healthy and
Terry, I can't hear you very clearly. Would you be able to unmask for that?
yeah, I myself am very healthy, but the folks in my community are of ages and health that where it can be. I'm really aware of every action I take out in the greater world, how it will affect the people that I live with, the 45 people here at Adawehi. And it's brought us, we did a lot more community events than we do now. So our homes have become tighter because you're doing more with just your housemates now than we were doing with all the homes. But we're the folks here at Adawehi, we all have our own way of making a living, and a lot of us have changed the way we make a living, and a lot of us are sharing work at home spaces. I don't know, it's just brought a richness to us, I think.
Nice. Wow. I don't think that's something that many people not living in community could say, that this time has brought richness to them. So that's unique. Yeah, really, really special and lucky in a way.
So I can speak to it. Innisfree, we've taken a bit of a different approach in that we've sort of taken the bubble approach, a la the MBA, with some precautions added in. But we have maintained freedom of movement for our coworkers and our volunteers throughout the village. And we have not implemented masking in the houses. We do mask during workstations because we know at those times we may be closer inside. But we still have invites between houses for dinners. And we still have some social activities, although our community lunch that I showed in the slideshow, we don't do that with most people are now picking up their lunch and eating it in their households rather than in the community center. So we've tried to mitigate some risks with some of the larger events. But what our volunteers have given is they have agreed to very, very strict restrictions on their outside activities. So they don't even go into stores, they don't eat in restaurants. If they travel or if our coworkers travel, they have to test and quarantine to come back. But what we've heard from them is while those restrictions are hard, they were so grateful that while a lot of their peers, especially our volunteers who are younger, were at home, with nothing to do, they were able to maintain work and maintain social relationships and feel fulfilled. And they used a lot of their creativity to come up with, we couldn't have our music festival where we invite the public, but they had a parade and we posted the video of the parade on our Facebook page. And so I think it's actually living in community has been a huge benefit because they have that safe bubble to operate within.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a huge benefit. Anyone else?
I'll jump in and share that Dancing Rabbit has been such a wonderful place to be during coronavirus. If there was ever a thought that I would leave Dancing Rabbit, this has been the experience that was like, community is a great place to be right now. I am surprised how little my life has changed. Certainly some things have still changed, but I'm getting much more connection and much more interface. I'm still able to come up to the common house, and I mask when I'm in the common house, but I'm still able to have a lot of interface with people. And we have 280 acres, and so it's been pretty easy to be outside and to interact with folks outside during that time. And my sense is that the community as a whole has, even though it's been a challenge for working together and finding that way to be safe while we're together, that it's been a really meaningful challenge for us to go, okay, how can we preserve our sense of connection, because that's what we are built on, and also find new ways to respond to this interesting creative challenge that the year has given us.
A meaningful challenge. Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it. Yep. Even for my own community, as we've kind of thought through, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to stay safe? It really comes from that place of care for your, the people you're living with and your neighbors. And I'm sure a lot of neighborhoods throughout the US don't get that opportunity to come together and have a meeting to talk about how we want to stay safe. So, Pam, do you want to add anything from your perspective?
No, I'm really just soaking it up. But I would say, like, for a forming community, because we've had to do a lot by distance anyway, because we really are finding people from different parts of the country. We've had like virtual happy hours for a long time, and we've had virtual meetings forever. And we try to, get together a little more socially. So, and making even more of an effort than we might have made if we were meeting face to face. So we were sort of set up for this in a way anyway. And then of course the challenge of people who wanted to come and visit not being able to visit. So we've struggled, and maybe others too who are looking to fill homes they have available, just people not being able to come out. And you can do so much, but most people are going to want to come out.
Yeah. Wow, but that's great that you were already in the virtual meeting mode. So this is just like totally smooth for you. Cool. Good.
I wanted to make a comment.
Go ahead.
It's a really good question, because you get to see the quality of cohesiveness that you have in your community when we're faced with situations like these. And it's really helpful to have a spiritual leader like Jackie Woods, who was the founder of Adawehi, to help to remind us of what the intent is. Yes, there's a lot of fear out there, and yes, there's a lot of reaction, and a lot of ways in which people seem to create different camps for or against wearing masks, or for or against whatever is happening out in the world. But when you have the intent to be of service for the greater good, it helps pull our communities together more, so that in the long run, not only are we supporting each other and ourselves as we pull in, but we're also making a difference out there. And so Jackie Woods has recorded many recordings on the website. If you go to jackiewoods.org, you can see some of the things that she's done that may be helpful for people who are struggling and are alone, because this is a time when there's a lot of isolation, which is why we're seeing so many people reaching out to us, and we're grateful for that. But in the event you can't move or nothing fits, there are resources out there, and I'm sure there are elements like that in each of our communities that we could share with everybody else out there.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to my next question, which is, what advice do you all have for someone who is thinking about joining a community and maybe is thinking about joining an intentional community for the first time? What would you say to them as advice and guidance?
One of the pieces that I would offer is to get clear on your must-have list versus your optional list for communities. So consider what is really important to you. If you have a 14-year-old and you must move to a community with other, like aged kids for your 14-year-old, that's a must-have. And, similarly, if you're looking for a place that's income sharing, maybe that's a must-have, maybe it's an optional piece. What are you looking for in terms of shared spiritual beliefs or shared ecological practices? Get clear on what is a absolute must-have versus a this would be nice list. And that's a really great place to start. The other piece I would share is to consider what you can do for the community you will join, not just what community can do for you. We are all in search of places where we can belong and feel a sense of connection and celebration in the context of a whole group of people. And we each bring our energy to a place and want to have this reciprocal cycle. And that's what makes community so rich, is when there is both a cycle of giving and receiving with every person who is there. And yeah, the other piece I would say is, like, my first piece of advice is just do it. Like, whatever is keeping you from moving to intentional community, if this is your dream, if this is what you are here to do, is be part of this experiment and movement towards living more closely together, there is nothing more important than making that dream a reality. And there is absolutely a ton of communities. There is one that will work for you. Why are you waiting? Come join us.
Yeah, why are you waiting?
Do a public service announcement. Anyways, but what we found is, and it was fun to hear all the different pillars, values, energies that each of us founded on and is now operating under. We found that folks that connect on that level seem to find a fit. You know, I've heard sustainability here, friendliness, neighborliness, support, word, health, and healing. If one of those values makes your heart sing, then look into one of these communities here today, or in another one that has something that makes your heart sing. Because all of the other stuff, like what's my room going to be like? Who am I going to be living with? Melts away when you're in that environment where everybody's there for the same intent, a joined intent. And so if one of our intents is draws you in, then that's probably the first step. But then along with everything else that Danielle said in her public service announcement.
Pam or Rory, either of you want to offer anything?
I thought that Danielle was spot on with the must-haves, and certainly come with an open mind and open communication. And I think a lot of it is the same. I mean, if we're talking specifically about the pandemic, a lot of it is the same challenges that you're probably having with your social circles and communities now. But at any time, I think you have to have that flexibility and openness and commitment to communicate and problem solve if you're going to enter the beautiful, complicated world of community living. So.
Nice.
I would just like to say one more thing. I saw a question in the chat about political differences, and I'll just speak to in a broad way. One of the most important things that folks can learn when they move to any community is how to live cooperatively and learn to bridge with people who have different opinions and perspectives on things. And right now, let's face it, the last few weeks have shown us that the world needs people who know how to live cooperatively. And I can guarantee you that most folks who move to an intentional community, their sense of purpose and sense of meaning goes up. And that's both great on a personal level, and we are doing something that is good for the planet when we learn how to live cooperatively with other people and with the other inanimate and animate, the other inanimate and animate beings on the planet. And so, like, this is something that the world needs at this time. If you're thinking of moving to community, there has never been a more crucial time for the survival of our species to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'd probably just add also, I guess it comes along with the must-haves and would like to haves, but knowing yourself, I think the more self-aware you are and understand what your needs are, the better. But also the other thing I was going to say was just about open to learning. I mean, there's a lot to learn about co-housing or intentional living, and then about the places where you would be going to. And then as you get together with people, that sort of ability to be flexible, to listen, and to be really creative in how you go about problem solving. those are all things that I think bode well for the individuals and for the communities.
Yeah, nice. Nice. Yeah, in my coaching work, I like to share that I think of joining a community like starting a relationship. And so there's these different phases of the relationship, starting with courtship and moving into getting a little more serious. And it's a two-way street, yeah? So it has to be a mutual thing. You have to feel like it's a good fit for you, and the community has to feel like it's a good fit for them. So being respectful and aware of that dynamic, and that's a journey. And I just love that so many people here joining us are just starting that journey, and at such a critical time, like Danielle said. And now that we're towards the end of our presentation, or excuse me, of our time together, let's open it up to just more questions from all of you. And if you have a question for all of the panelists or just one, we can kind of answer in popcorn fashion. I see that Zach has their hand up, so I'm gonna bring you in, Zach. And we probably have other questions we can type into the chat to answer or answer in a free moment. Okay, Zach, what's your question? Oh, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Yikes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, good.
You can hear me now? Okay. So I'm also new to communities. I've never lived in community. I visited a farming community in Western Illinois. I've been living for the past 3 years in Russia, but I just moved back to the States. I've got 2 young kids in the Illinois area. And I'm looking for possibly moving into a community that with shared intentions and sort of political goals, or at least political values. And I guess that's where my question comes in, because politics is a big divisive thing today. And I think Danielle sort of got to something about how we need this cooperative aspect. But I was wondering how many of these of your communities, if you view yourselves as politically engaged or politically directed, do you see sort of politics being a big part, or social justice even being a big part of your mission? I know, like Adawehi, for example, it seems to be very healing based. Innisfree seems to be very oriented towards taking care of people with disabilities and providing them sort of structure, or providing them sort of like a society to have. So I was wondering if any of the communities see themselves as primarily political, or if that's sort of a point that many communities try to purposely steer away from.
We do steer away from explicitly political activities as a nonprofit and as a service provider. I would say, as I imagine you would guess, I think a lot of the people who choose to volunteer with us lean more towards the progressive side, but we do try to get very involved in service-oriented work within our community, but we kind of by necessity have to stay pretty apolitical.
I'll jump in and say that Dancing Rabbit is focused on creating government at a micro level that more that people can participate in on a community scale. And so we have our village council. And so when you talk about politics, it's like we are actually creating our own micro political environment and micro government at Dancing Rabbit. And we have incredible engagement compared to the average American civic engagement at Dancing Rabbit. And so there's a way in which that allows folks to then get more engaged on a larger scale as well when they understand our decision-making processes. We also, while there's certainly stances that we have as a whole community, different individuals are free to engage however we want. We had one of our founders join Citizens Climate Lobby. We've had different folks who advocate and do all different sorts of political engagement, and it's something that we support as a community. And the other piece I would say is that there are a number of communities who are specifically focused on that. And so, like, just again to my former point, if you're looking at community, consider whether that's a must-have and what the specific things are, or whether it's optional, and then look for a community like that. Possibility Alliance that was in La Plata, Missouri, they were formed specifically with an intention to be very activist minded, and a lot of them were all about going out and getting arrested and doing sort of like public demonstrations that influence the the political scene. And so just know what you're looking for and then go out and find it, because I'm sure there's a community doing it.
Great, good question.
Yeah.
Pam, you want to jump
I'll
in?
just be honest, because we're a forming community, and I don't think we've ever made any statement, but there's a lot of code wording going on, and so we're pretty much of the same political persuasion. I mean, starting, somewhere left of center and going from there. And I don't, I'll just say that because that has been our experience so far. Also, because our town is kind of considered kind of a liberal island in a fairly conservative part of the country. And I think that's a really fair statement. I question, and I certainly had that myself before I joined. I didn't have an explicit conversation about it, but yeah, I sensed that out. Yeah. And again, I would say individuals are very active. The community hasn't taken any positions, but of course we're very new.
We need to hop off the webinar because we have a community-wide meditation that starts shortly, but I do want to at least address a little bit of what Zach asked. See this stream behind us? Well, on one side of the stream are where the progressives live, and on the other side of the stream is where the conservatives live. But I wouldn't really call us political because we stay separate. We're not political. Like you heard, Zach, we're about healing. And we live, Adawehi is in the middle of pastoral land in Western North Carolina that is as red as blood. And we're who we are in that and with that, and we don't point fingers at them, and nobody points fingers at us. And because one of our tenets is healing, differences, like you were saying, Danielle, are actually welcome because that's a chance for healing. So I'm so regret that we have to go, but we have a commitment, a community-wide commitment that we need to head out to. So it was great to see all of you, and we put Diane's email address in the chat if anybody wants to follow up with Adawehi. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry and Diane. Wonderful to have you. Take care. Good. All right. And thank you, Zach, for that question. And I see that we have Linda with their hand up. So I'm going to bring you in, Linda, and we have some other questions in the chat. So we got plenty to cover. Linda, are you with us?
I'm here. I'm here. I'll move me up a little bit. Actually, my question was for Adawehi. Oh, so I lost that, but I can follow up with them.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry
about that. That was unfortunate.
Bad timing. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's see. So we had a few questions here. One about what, if any, issues have you had attracting people and finding new members to join? And have you had issues with new members who haven't worked out and had to leave?
Yes and yes. I mean, we definitely, I think, have seen, we had hoped that maybe during the pandemic, we would see an increase in folks interested, perhaps because they were university students and had to take a pause or because of other reasons. But we haven't found that that has been the case. We've found that there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's actually decreased. And like I mentioned, we don't have the international option as much right now, although we did just get somebody here from South Africa. That was very exciting, but it's hard right now. As far as I mentioned before, we have a 1-month trial period for our new volunteers, and we sort of acknowledge that during that trial period, we may find that either side it isn't working for either side. And then we have a few evaluations along the way. And I was actually just about to answer somebody's question in the chat about what do you do if a community member is becoming difficult, or and we do have for the first 5 years, someone's a volunteer, they have to apply to the community to extend each year. It's a rare thing that someone isn't invited to come back, but there is there needs to be a proactive acknowledgement of how they expect to grow within the community. After that, because again, this is different than a traditional, I guess, community, because they then become our staff members. If they're in a work role, they do continue to have evaluations, and all those are sort of tied in. But we hope that as people are new to the community, that extension process leads to open dialogue about challenges that might be there.
Nice. Great.
I would say, I mean, again, we're new, so we're all about getting new members. And yeah, COVID, we were a little hopeful too, because, you know, a lot of people are moving out of cities. So, and we've had a much bigger uptick in sort of activity, you know, on social media and websites and things, but it has become harder unless those folks, so we're drawing more heavily, you know, from the Denver area, and we're actually going to do some, you know, a little bit of marketing in Phoenix and places nearby. So, but for us, it's often has to do with, you know, it's just a mismatch, right, between those needs to haves and want to have. So we struggle as people, but I mean, we just got 2 members last week, and we've had some others. So we're moving forward, but it's a hard game, I think, on both sides to find those individuals who you know fall in love with your particular place. And so I think it's just you keep looking. It's maybe a little bit like, you know, looking for a house or looking for a new place in the country to live. You figure it out and you see if it feels right. It's kind of intuitive sometimes, no matter how much research you do, which you should do. So we've struggled a little bit because of COVID. And because we're somewhat isolated, but we're in a town, so we have some of the services and some of the walkability and things that some people really want. It's a mixed bag.
And Pam, I know your community is new, but have you run into any conflict, just speaking to this question about handling difficult members? Have you run into this, or has it not been an issue yet?
No, I think we have all kinds of personalities, even you know, in our growing group, and we work really. We haven't had anybody leave that I know of from you know personal conflict, but it's got to be a part. I've never been in any living situation where it wasn't a challenge, and we're trying to approach it by educating ourselves more and more about consensus decision making. You know, making sure we're all kind of have a similar vocabulary. I think I mentioned earlier, we don't have one particular process we follow, but we're learning about many, and practicing listening skills. I mean, really actually doing what you might find in a training every other week to try and address that. And I must say that it does help very much. People calm down, and the issues we have had, we've been able to resolve a little more when we all acknowledge we know why we're all here, and it's all for, you know, a good reason. So we are being somewhat successful. We probably will keep up our training for as long as we can.
Yeah. Conflict will happen sooner or later, so good to be prepared. Oh, Rory, be sure to check in the chat. You have a question there. And Danielle, what is your answer to both those questions?
Sure. The main limitations or the obstacles to new folks joining or coming to Dancing Rabbit are primarily one of 2 reasons. One is our location, And the other is finding ways to make ends meet when you move to Dancing Rabbit. So to the location piece, we are in rural Missouri. And for a lot of people, that's not a very appealing place to move. We don't have the gorgeous mountains of Colorado. We don't have all the city lifestyle of being near a California big city. And at the same time, we are a beautiful place where you can get sort of the culture of being on the East Coast or the West Coast in terms of the progressive minded values, and still be in the Midwest, where we are doing what I think is one of the more radical things that we do at Dancing Rabbit, which is healing that divide in terms of the red-blue divide. And so there's a very subtle form of activism happening here just through organic personal involvement with our local community. And we break down those us-them barriers with the surrounding folks in our area. And that ends up being a huge contribution, I think, towards what we're doing in the surrounding area. And at the same time, we get to enjoy a very low cost of living and an incredibly beautiful, expansive natural environment around us. So it's kind of like having a lot of the benefits of your progressive city, but getting to experience that in a more rural lifestyle setting. The other piece was income. We are not an income sharing community. And so if you move to Dancing Rabbit, you've got to figure out how to make your own ends meet, but there are opportunities in the community for income. We just don't do it for you. And that requires a lot of creativity. And honestly, with coronavirus, I think that we are seeing many more people move to remote and portable jobs. And so that barrier to entry is becoming less and less as the whole economy is starting to go portable and go remote. The other piece that you mentioned about difficult members, I would just take a step back and say, like, what, let's deconstruct difficult for whom and difficult how. I would say that every person who's been a difficult member at Dancing Rabbit has been offering a piece of the truth that is something that the whole community can learn from and shift and adapt and integrate that experience so that we can be a better community. And I would say that the biggest thing that we can do when we view somebody being difficult is deconstruct that us-them barrier. Once again, instead of just putting somebody in a box and going like, oh, that difficult person, or even that difficult person putting other people in a box of like, that darn community, if we can find those ways to really listen and really care, really empathize, and really connect, then that doesn't become a divisive wall. And then even if folks discovered that it's not for them to stay at Dancing Rabbit, those people leave and they are ambassadors of this way of cooperative, sustainable living wherever else they go next. And that's why we don't see people leaving Dancing Rabbit as a loss. We see it as an asset. We see it as people out there taking this way of living out and expressing it in other locations and settings.
Nice. Yeah, well answered. And you have another question in the chat about the weather at Dancing Rabbit. How severe is the winter?
Less severe than Canada and more severe than Mexico, Texas, or Florida.
Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna tag in here just for 1 second because I live here. I'm from Texas. I'm from Houston, Texas, and that's where I was born and raised and lived my entire life. And I think it is not about the severity, but it's about your mindset. Like when I view winter, I think of it as winter wonderland, and some people here don't think of it as winter wonderland and they have a harder time. So I think like depending on how you view winter is how winter is for you. So for me, it's magical and I love it, and I am all the seasons take my breath away, and it's fun to have seasons. And so I think it's not like, to me, I'm from Texas, I'm from Houston. It's not that severe. It's not bad, but I mean, that's just my opinion because I love it so much. And also there's really good advice. It's not that there's bad weather. It's just that your clothing isn't right or something like that. So anyway.
And the other piece I'll share is that like we do indeed get snow at Dancing Rabbit. And the big piece to remember is that at Dancing Rabbit, we don't get in our cars nearly as much. The thing that I hated the most about winter for my life pre-Dancing Rabbit was driving in the snow and how dangerous that is. And at Dancing Rabbit, our collective mileage, going back to my presentation earlier, is so low that if that's your barrier, then you won't have that here. Even in a place that gets less snowstorms than we do, you'll be in your car more in those snowstorms than if you live at Dancing Rabbit, where we hardly use vehicles compared to the average American.
Great. Good. And we have another question in the chat. How do you deal with members or residents who want to be an active part of the community, but also travel a lot for work? Do you have members that are there half of the year, for example, and elsewhere the other half? Go ahead, Pam.
Okay. We have plans. So for us, we've decided that we won't have short rentals. We live in a town that's, an hour from a really famous ski area. So you can imagine what could happen in a place like that. So we don't have short rentals, but we are open to other arrangements. And we have a lot of people in town who are interested in renting. So I imagine we're going to have situations where people are gone part of the year and can still manage to participate in the community. I think that would be a bigger question maybe for ecotourism, an eco place.
Ecovillage.
But we sort of thought about that too, and we have people who won't be there year round, and but because we're a town community, we're co-housing that we'll participate when we're there, and hopefully be able to, if we're doing any renting, we're doing that somewhere with someone who's able to who wants to participate, because that's really all we want are people who are interested in participating while they're there.
Okay. Rory or Danielle, you want to answer this one?
I'm going to pass on this one. Thanks.
So for us, it's, if someone comes as a volunteer, it's sort of, it is a full-time job at that point. Because you're talking about the one with people part-time, is that the question still?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, for us, it's a little bit different because if someone comes as a volunteer, they're not going to have a whole lot of time to be traveling elsewhere. We do sometimes have returning volunteers, so somebody who does a year and then maybe in their extension proposal. We actually just had an extension proposal from a really awesome volunteer who would like for her second year to return to her hometown to be close to her mother and work seasonally for 6 months and then come back for another 6 months. So the community will have the opportunity to consider that, and I expect that they will accept it, because once someone is trained and knows our guys, then they can just slide right back in. And there's an inherent transiency to our volunteers that means that our coworkers are used to them coming and going because we have new volunteers each year. But as far as in somebody's first year volunteering, or if someone's long-term and has a staff role, that's probably taking up more of their time. We do sometimes have staff who live on site who have significant others who might work outside of the village, certainly.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, for my community, when I was joining, I was, and I hope to still someday, be traveling a lot. And I knew that was going to be a kind of a sticking point, because the community where I live really values having people who live there year round and not having it be like a sort of a part-time community. So I made a commitment that I would only be away for 4 months out of the year. That was kind of the agreement I made with my community. So I think that most communities feel wanting to have people who are rooted there, but it really depends, because you can also have communities that are more transient focused, and that's just the nature of the community. So just depends. And I don't see any other questions.
I put my answer to that for Dancing Rabbit just in the chat to keep us moving through to the next question.
Oh, sweet. Good. So if you do have a question, our participants, we have just 5 minutes or so left. If you want to raise your hand or put your question in the chat. Carolyn, are you seeing anything that I might be missing? Okay. Whew, I know we covered a lot, so maybe people are just like absorbing all of this great information. Pam?
If no other questions come in, I would be interested in hearing a little bit about, how much this met expectations or what people were looking for, either in this event or in co-housing, intentional living generally.
That's great. Great question. Anyone want to speak to that from our audience? Don't be shy.
Well, as a panelist, I'll say that I was a little self-conscious that we weren't going to fit the mold of the communities that were on this panel. And so I'm really excited to hear how different each of the communities. I think it was a really great forum in that all of them were different. I thought somehow in my mind that we were going to be the odd man out and everybody else was going to be very similar.
Yeah. And if we had Heart to Heart Farms here, they were also kind of outlier in the sense of being really a farming community. And they have this great, also a strong service component. The owners of the farm are both veterans and do a lot with giving away food, and, we'll include that information in the follow-up email so other people can check out their project. It's really sweet. Yeah, someone wrote, I really enjoyed the session and got a lot out of it. Ecovillages Australia. Okay. And informative and helpful. Met my expectations. Okay, confirm my initial attraction to Dancing Rabbit. Nice. And then you have a few more questions in the chat, Danielle, if you want to address those. Alrighty. Okay, well, I think that's a wrap. Thank you all so much for spending time with us and sharing with our audience about your communities and inspiring everyone to join a community, and how that's such a beneficial thing to do for one's own life, and also to help shift us as a society towards more cooperation. I love all the rich words and pieces of wisdom that came out in this session. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
I do want to add on there for it seems like for all of these communities, if you do have continual questions and want to reach out, we all have websites and there's ways to contact us. And we can put that into the email when I send it out tomorrow, but don't think that your questions have to be all answered today. Reach out and talk to us and let us bridge that gap.
Awesome. Carolyn, do you have that evaluation form handy that you
do? Give me 1 second and let me grab it. I'm going to put it into the chat. So this is a feedback form that we use so that you as our audience and workshop attendees can help us improve what we're doing. So I'm going to put it into the chat right now. Make sure I'm putting it to everybody. We'd love to hear from you. I'll also put it in the email tomorrow as a reminder.
Good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Take care. Have a good rest of your day. And thank you so much also to our participants. Glad you could join.
Thanks so much for
Great
this
meeting you all.
opportunity. Bye-bye. Thanks.